Princess Kalara stood perfectly still as Prince Thaxon of the Valarian Republic circled her, like a predator evaluating wounded prey. Her pale blue skin seemed almost translucent under the ceremonial lights of the bonding chamber, and her crimson curls caught the illumination like fire against ice. She kept her chin raised, refusing to let him see the shame burning in her violet eyes. "The rumors are true then," Thaxon said, his voice carrying easily across the vaulted chamber where dozens of Serati nobility watched in tense silence. His scaled green skin rippled with barely contained disgust as he gestured toward her delicate frame. "Ethereal bone syndrome. How unfortunate." Kalara's father, Emperor Vorthok, shifted uncomfortably on his crystal throne. "Prince Thaxon, Princess Kalara has proven herself exceptional in diplomacy and stellar navigation. Her condition does not diminish her. Her condition makes her unfit for bonding with Valarian blood," Thaxon interrupted, his reptilian features twisting into what passed for a sneer among his species. "Our offspring would be contaminated, weakened." He stopped directly in front of Kalara, towering over her by nearly 2 feet. "I formally reject this bonding proposal." The words hit Kalara like a physical blow, though she'd heard variations of them 17 times before from 17 different suitors. Each rejection carved deeper into her soul, but she maintained her composure as protocol demanded. "The Valarian Republic's decision is noted and respected," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "May your bloodline prosper." Thaxon nodded curtly and strode from the chamber without another glance, his entourage following like loyal hounds. The massive doors sealed behind them with a resonating boom that seemed to echo Kalara's isolation. "Emperor." Vorthok descended from his throne, his own pale blue features creased with worry. "Daughter, there are still options. The Zephyrian Collective has expressed interest in my dowry." "Not in me," Kalara cut him off gently. "Father, we both know what this is. I am 25 cycles old with a genetic condition that makes me appear fragile to warrior races across the galaxy. The Grand Assembly approaches, and unmarried heirs lose succession rights. You need a solution, not false hope." The Emperor's shoulders sagged. The High Council grows impatient. "They whisper of naming your cousin Draven as heir if you remain unbonded by the Assembly. Draven, whose idea of diplomacy involved plasma cannons, and whose intelligence could be measured in negative numbers. The thought of him ruling the Serati Empire made Kalara's stomach clench. "How long do I have?" she asked. 14 solar cycles. "The Earth delegation arrives tomorrow for the pre-assembly negotiations. After that," he trailed off, but they both knew, after that, her usefulness to the Empire would end. Kalara bowed formally. "Then I request permission to retire to my chambers, Your Majesty. I need to prepare for tomorrow's proceedings." "Granted." Vorthok's voice was heavy with guilt and helplessness. Kalara walked from the bonding chamber with measured steps, ignoring the pitying looks and whispered conversations that followed her. Only when she reached her private chambers did she allow herself to collapse onto her bed, finally letting the tears fall. Through her crystalline window, she could see the lights of incoming ships. The Earth delegation arriving early. Humans. She'd studied their species extensively, but never met one. According to her research, they were considered primitive by galactic standards, barely worthy of diplomatic recognition. Perhaps that made them perfect for her, the unwanted princess, and the insignificant species. At least they couldn't reject what they'd never been offered. She dried her tears and moved to her telescope, losing herself in the familiar comfort of mapping distant stars, unaware that her destiny was about to arrive aboard one of those small, unremarkable human ships. The Earth delegation ship was smaller than Kalara had expected, a modest vessel that looked almost quaint beside the massive warships of other galactic powers. From her observatory window, she watched the humans disembark, noting their strange uniformity of height and their curious habit of covering their skin with fabric. Ambassador Jackson Webb stepped onto the crystalline platform with confident strides that belied his species' reputation for timidity. Unlike the towering alien dignitaries, he stood at average height with dark hair and warm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. His simple black diplomatic uniform contrasted sharply with the elaborate ceremonial armor worn by other delegates. "The humans appear unremarkable," commented Kalara's lady-in-waiting, Nexura, as they observed from above. "Perhaps that's exactly what makes them remarkable," Kalara murmured, studying Jackson's face through her scope. There was something in his expression, a quiet strength that reminded her of deep, still waters. The welcome banquet that evening proved more tortuous than usual. Kalara sat at the high table beside her father, watching alien nobles feast on exotic delicacies while making barely concealed jokes about her condition. Prince Malther of the Krex Dominion was particularly vicious, his insectoid features clicking with amusement as he regaled his table with tales of defective bloodlines. "I heard she can barely lift a plasma blade," he chittered loud enough for her to hear. Imagine such weakness contaminating noble genetics. Kalara's grip tightened on her chalice, but she maintained her composure. Years of practice had taught her to endure such humiliation with grace. Then a voice cut through the mockery with unexpected authority. "Forgive my ignorance, Prince Malther, but I'm curious about Serati succession laws." Jackson Webb had risen from the diplomatic table, his tone polite but carrying an edge. "In my research, I found that heirs are chosen based on intellectual capability and diplomatic skill, not physical prowess. Have I misunderstood?" The hall quieted. Malther's mandibles clicked irritably. "The human speaks of matters beyond his comprehension." "Perhaps," Jackson agreed with a slight smile. "But I also noticed that Princess Kalara successfully negotiated the Nexus trade accords last cycle, an agreement that increased prosperity for 7 systems. Most impressive for someone supposedly defective." Heat flooded Kalara's cheeks, but not from shame this time. No one had ever defended her publicly before. Her father shot her a surprised glance, clearly as shocked as she was. Malther's compound eyes glittered with anger. "The human forgets his place. My place is as Earth's representative, committed to understanding the remarkable beings we hope to call allies." Jackson replied smoothly. "Princess Kalara's achievements speak for themselves." The tension stretched taut until Emperor Vortha cleared his throat. "Ambassador Webb raises valid points. Perhaps we should focus on tomorrow's negotiations rather than past accomplishments." As conversation reluctantly resumed, Kalara found herself stealing glances at the human delegate. When their eyes met across the hall, he offered her a small, genuine smile that sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Later, seeking solitude in the palace gardens, she was surprised to find Jackson there first, studying the bioluminescent flowers that bloomed only in Sarathus Prime's twin moonlight. "They're beautiful," he said without turning around, "like living jewels. Most visitors find them too delicate," Kalara replied, stepping beside him. "Too fragile to be worth noticing." Now he did turn, and his gaze held hers with surprising intensity. "Sometimes the most beautiful things appear fragile because they're precious, not weak. These flowers survive in conditions that would kill hardier plants. You defended me tonight," she said quietly. "Why?" "Because what they said was wrong. You're not defective, Princess Kalara. You're extraordinary." His voice was soft but certain. "On Earth, we have a saying, still waters run deep. Your strength isn't the kind that shows itself through violence or intimidation." Kalara felt tears threatening again. "But these were different from earlier. You barely know me. Then tell me more," he said simply. "I want to understand who you really are, not what others think you should be." For the first time in years, Kalara smiled without forcing it. "I study the stars," she began, and found herself sharing dreams she'd never voiced to anyone. Her love of stellar cartography, her secret poetry, her longing to explore the galaxy not as a political pawn, but as herself. Jackson listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his own intelligence and curiosity. When she described her condition, he nodded thoughtfully. "Ethereal bone syndrome makes your bones lighter, but your nervous system more sensitive, correct? That would actually make you ideal for space travel, less mass to transport, more intuitive reaction to gravitational changes. You see it as an advantage?" she asked, amazed. "I see it as part of what makes you uniquely you," he replied. "The galaxy is full of warriors, princess, but it has precious few dreamers and peacemakers. As the twin moons reached their zenith, casting silver light across the garden, Lara realized something profound was shifting inside her. For the first time in her life, someone saw her not as a problem to be solved or a weakness to be hidden, but as herself complete and worthy exactly as she was. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me." Jackson's smile was warm enough to melt the ice around her heart. "The honor is mine. Princess, the absolute honor is mine." The grand bonding ceremony took place in the Celestial Hall, its crystal dome open to display the swirling nebulae above Sarathus Prime. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the amphitheater, style seating, their various forms creating a tapestry of colors and textures. Lara stood at the center of the ceremonial circle, wearing the traditional bonding gown of silver silk that made her pale blue skin seem luminous. One by one, the eligible princes approached. Each rejection followed the same ritual of formal assessment, a polite but cutting dismissal, and the ceremonial turning away that symbolized her unsuitability. Prince Vex of the Titanium clans barely glanced at her before announcing, "The clans require genetic strength. This female lacks the necessary constitution." Prince Zorak of the Fire Worlds was more creative in his cruelty. "Our offspring would be ash." Before they drew breath, "I cannot contaminate my lineage with such frailty." With each rejection, Lara felt herself shrinking inward, though she maintained perfect posture and appropriate responses. The murmurs from the audience grew louder, more pitying, more amused. She caught sight of several alien nobles placing bets on how many more rejections she would endure. Emperor Vorthic's face was carved from stone, but she could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. The High Council members whispered among themselves, undoubtedly discussing Cousin Draven's upcoming ascension. Prince Thorvin of the Crystal Empire delivered the final, most crushing blow. I have never seen a more pitiable specimen presented for bonding. The princess should withdraw from consideration entirely rather than continue this farce. The audience laughed, actually laughed, and Lara felt something break inside her chest. This was it. 23 rejections. Her succession rights would be forfeit, her future destroyed, her dreams of contributing to the Empire's diplomacy dead. "Are there any other suitors who wish to make a formal proposal?" the High Ceremoniant asked, his voice already dismissive. Silence stretched across the vast hall like a death shroud. Then, impossibly, a voice rang out clear and strong, "I do." Every head turned toward the diplomatic section where Jackson Webb stood, his simple Earth uniform stark against the elaborate regalia around him. The silence became absolute, as if the entire hall had collectively stopped breathing. "A human?" Someone whispered in shock. "Impossible," breathed another. Jackson stepped down from the gallery and walked across the ceremonial floor with steady, purposeful strides. Each footstep echoed in the stunned quiet. He stopped before Lara and, to her utter amazement, dropped to one knee in the traditional position of supplication. "Princess Lara of the Sarati Empire," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "I, Ambassador Jackson Webb of Earth, formally request the honor of bonding with you." The explosion of voices was immediate and deafening. Alien nobles leaped to their feet, shouting in a dozen languages. The High Council members looked apoplectic. Even Emperor Vorthic appeared stunned into silence. "This is an outrage," Prince Thorvin bellowed. "A primitive human dares approach Sarati. Royalty? He has no bloodline," shrieked Duchess Valara. "No genetic worth, no enhancements. No noble heritage, no claim to galactic significance," added Prince Malthor. Through the chaos, Lara stared down at Jackson's upturned face. His brown eyes were steady, certain, completely unaffected by the storm raging around them. "Why?" she whispered, the word barely audible above the din. Jackson's smile was gentle. "Because I see someone extraordinary being told she's worthless by beings who aren't fit to understand her worth. Because your intelligence outshines their strength, your compassion outweighs their power, and your heart." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Your heart is the most beautiful thing in this galaxy." Emperor Vorthic finally found his voice. "Ambassador Webb, do you understand what you're proposing? The bonding of a human to Sarati royalty is unprecedented. The political ramifications. With respect, Your Majesty, Jackson interrupted. Never. Taking his eyes off Kalara. I understand exactly what I'm proposing. I'm asking to spend my life with the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Regardless of species or politics, you would disgrace yourself for a defective princess, Prince. Thorvin sneered. Jackson rose to his feet with fluid grace and turned to face the assembled nobles. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute conviction. I would consider myself the most honored man in the galaxy to call Princess Kalara my bondmate. You see weakness where I see grace. You see defect where I see perfection. You see unworthiness where I see someone who could teach us all what true strength looks like. His gaze swept the crowd with quiet challenge. Perhaps the defect isn't in the princess, but in your ability to recognize what stands before you. The hall erupted again, but Kalara heard none of it. Her entire universe had narrowed to the man standing beside her, the impossible human who had done what no prince, no noble, no being of supposed worth had been willing to do. He had chosen her. I accept, she said, her voice clear and carrying despite the chaos. I accept Ambassador Jackson Webb's proposal. The explosion of sound that followed could probably be heard from orbit, but as security forces moved to restore order and councilors shouted themselves hoarse, Kalara felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The scandal erupted across the galaxy within hours. Holographic news feeds blazed with headlines: Human disgraces Serati princess, interspecies bonding threatens galactic order, and Earth's diplomatic suicide. Death threats poured in from xenophobic factions, while political analysts predicted everything, from trade wars to actual military conflicts. Kalara found herself effectively imprisoned in her chambers for her own protection. But she wasn't alone. Jackson had been granted guest quarters in the same wing, ostensibly for security reasons, though everyone knew the Emperor was buying time to find a diplomatic solution to the crisis. The Terran Council is demanding I withdraw the proposal, Jackson told her during one of their clandestine meetings in her private study. They sat close together on her reading couch, sharing warmth in the cool night air that drifted through her balcony. They're threatening to recall me and end all negotiations with the Serati Empire. Kalara's heart clenched. Then you should withdraw it. I won't let you destroy your career for me. My career, Jackson laughed, though there was no humor in it. Kalara, before I met you, my career was representing a species most of the galaxy considers barely evolved. I was going through the motions of a life that felt empty and meaningless. He took her hands in his touch sending shivers up her arms. You've given me something worth fighting for, but the consequences are worth facing together, he finished firmly. Unless, do you want me to withdraw? The vulnerability in his voice broke her heart. No, she whispered. I've never wanted anything more than I want you to stay. Their first kiss happened naturally, inevitably, like stars aligning after eons of separate orbits. His lips were warm and gentle against hers, tasting of the earth coffee he'd grown fond of sharing with her. When they broke apart, both were breathing unsteadily. I've never felt anything like this, Kalara confessed, her forehead resting against his. Neither have I, Jackson admitted. I thought I understood attraction, even love. But this is something entirely different. Their relationship deepened during the long nights spent hidden away from the political storm. Jackson would read her earth poetry while she shared Serati songs that made the crystalline walls hum with harmonic resonance. He taught her card games from his world while she showed him how to navigate by stellar formations. Your people think I'm fragile, she said one evening as they lay together on her bed, her head on his chest while he traced patterns on her bare shoulder. They'd grown comfortable with intimate touches, though they hadn't yet crossed the final threshold. Sometimes I think they're right. You survived 23 public rejections with dignity intact. Jackson murmured into her hair. You've endured years of being told you're worthless while never losing your compassion or intelligence. You're negotiating the most complex political situation in galactic history, while keeping both our peoples from war. His arms tightened around her. If that's fragile, then fragile is the strongest thing I know. The night everything changed began like any other. They were in her observatory. Jackson learning to operate her telescope while Lara pointed out constellations significant to Serati culture. But when he turned from the eyepiece to ask a question, the sight of her bathed in starlight took his breath away. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, reaching up to touch her face. "My skin is too pale, my bones too delicate. Your skin is like moonlight on water," he interrupted, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Your bones are elegant, perfect for your frame. You're exactly as you should be." When he kissed her this time, it was different, deeper, more urgent. Lara felt herself melting into him, every cell in her body awakening to sensations she'd never imagined. Her hands found the fastenings of his shirt while his fingers tangled in her crimson curls. "Are you sure?" he asked against her lips when she began pulling him toward her bed. "I've never been more sure of anything," she breathed. Making love with Jackson was nothing like the clinical descriptions she'd read in diplomatic texts. About interspecies bonding, it was gentle and fierce, tender and passionate, filled with whispered endearments and shared laughter. When they discovered the delightful differences in their physiologies, he worshipped her body with reverent touches, showing her that every part of her he touched was precious to him. Afterward, as they lay entwined beneath her silk covers, Lara traced the planes of his chest with wondering fingers. "I never understood why beings sought physical bonding," she confessed. "It seemed mechanical, necessary for reproduction, but not particularly meaningful." Jackson's laugh rumbled beneath her ear. "And now I understand why poets write about it, why wars are fought over it, why it's considered sacred." She looked up at him, her violet eyes luminous in the darkness. "I understand why it's called making love. Because that's exactly what we did. We made love between us, created it, from nothing." "I love you, Lara," he said simply. "Whatever happens, whatever chaos erupts around us, that won't change. I love you too," she whispered back, the words feeling both brand new and ancient on her tongue. Outside her windows, protest ships circled the palace, their lights painting angry patterns against the night sky. Political opponents schemed in distant chambers while allies wavered in their support. The galaxy itself seemed poised on the edge of unprecedented upheaval. But in the sanctuary of her bed, wrapped in Jackson's arms with the taste of love still on her lips, Lara felt invincible. Let them protest, let them scheme, let them rage against the impossible bond between a human and a princess. Love had made them stronger than any political force. Together, they could face whatever came next. The assassination attempt came 3 weeks later, in the form of a poison gift from an admirer, crystalline flowers that released toxic spores. When Lara touched them, only Jackson's quick thinking and knowledge of Earth emergency medicine saved her life, though she spent 2 days unconscious while he never left her bedside. The purest coalition claimed responsibility, Emperor Vorthik reported grimly when she finally awakened. "They view your bonding as a contamination that must be cleansed." But the attempt on her life had an unexpected consequence. It galvanized public opinion. Common citizens, who had initially been scandalized by the interspecies bonding, began to see Lara and Jackson as romantic figures, star-crossed lovers fighting against impossible odds. Support groups formed across both Earth and Serathis Prime, demanding protection for the couple. The real crisis came when the Hegemony Council, a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful military species, issued an ultimatum: dissolve this abomination of a bonding, or face economic sanctions and potential military action against both Earth and the Serati Empire. "They're threatening war over our love," Lara said one morning as she read the latest diplomatic cables. She and Jackson were taking breakfast in her private dining room, a luxury that might end soon if the political situation deteriorated further. "Then we end this," Jackson said quietly. "I won't let entire civilizations suffer for my selfishness." "Our love isn't selfish," Lara said fiercely, "and I have an idea. The Hegemony Council is operating under several false assumptions about interstellar law. If I can prove their ultimatum itself violates galactic treaty." She spent the next 48 hours buried in legal codes, dating back to the original Galactic Charter, cross-referencing trade agreements and sovereignty clauses, with the intensity that had made her legendary among diplomatic circles. Jackson brought her meals and coffee, massaging her shoulders when tension made her ethereal bones ache. Found it. She finally whispered, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. Article 7 of the Galactic Unity Accord. No coalition may dictate the internal bonding practices of sovereign systems. The Hegemony Council just violated the founding document of galactic civilization. The emergency session of the full Galactic Senate was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from thousands of worlds gathered in the massive amphitheater, while billions more watched through holographic feeds. Lara stood at the speaker's podium, looking impossibly small and delicate against the vast backdrop of galactic power. But when she spoke, her voice carried with the authority of absolute knowledge and unshakable conviction. Honored representatives, she began, we gather not to discuss a simple bonding between the individuals, but to determine whether fear and prejudice will be allowed to supersede the very laws that bind our civilization together. For the next 3 hours, she systematically dismantled every legal argument the Hegemony Council had presented. She cited precedent after precedent, treaty after treaty, demonstrating not only that their ultimatum was illegal, but that their very gathering violated dozens of sovereignty agreements. The question before this body is simple, she concluded, her pale blue skin glowing under the chamber's lights. Will we be governed by law or by prejudice? Will we honor the diversity that makes our galaxy strong, or will we cower before those who demand conformity through fear? The vote wasn't even close. The Hegemony Council's ultimatum was declared invalid by a margin of 8-1, with sanctions threatened against any coalition that attempted similar overreach in the future. But Lara wasn't finished. In a move that stunned even her father, she used her legal victory to propose a new galactic initiative, the Diversity Accords, which would protect interspecies bonding and create cultural exchange programs between worlds. My bonding to Ambassador Webb has been called an abomination, she said to the assembly. I prefer to call it a beginning, a chance for our galaxy to grow beyond the limitations of single-species thinking. The Accords passed by an even wider margin than the vote against the Hegemony Council. Their wedding took place 6 months later in the Crystal Garden of the Imperial Palace, attended by representatives from across the galaxy. Lara wore a gown that combined Serati silk with earth lace, while Jackson's formal wear incorporated elements from both cultures. The ceremony itself blended tradition Serati harmonic bonding with earth exchange of rings, creating something entirely new yet honoring both heritages. Do you, Princess Lara, accept Jackson Webb as your equal partner in all things, to stand beside you in strength and support you in weakness? Asked the officiant. I do, she replied, her voice clear and certain, though I suspect he'll be doing more supporting than I will. Do you, Ambassador Jackson Webb, accept Princess Lara as your equal partner in all things, to stand beside you in strength and support you in weakness? I do, Jackson said, his eyes never leaving her face. And I promise to spend every day proving worthy of the honor. Their wedding night was spent in the palace's highest tower, in chambers prepared especially for them. The crystalline walls could be made transparent, offering a panoramic view of the stars, or opaque for privacy. They chose transparency, making love beneath the light of 1,000 suns, while the galaxy itself seemed to celebrate their union. Have I told you today that I love you? Jackson murmured against her throat as they moved together in the ancient rhythm of bonding. Only a dozen times, Lara gasped, her body arching beneath his. But I never tire of hearing it. Good. Because I plan to tell you every day for the rest of our lives. The epilogue to their story came exactly 1 year later. Lara stood in the same crystal garden where they'd been married, but now her pale blue skin glowed with more than happiness. She was luminous with pregnancy, carrying the first human Serati hybrid in galactic history. The medical scans show she's perfectly healthy, she told Jackson as they walked among the bioluminescent flowers. Dr. Vex says her bone structure combines the best of both our species, light enough for easy space travel, strong enough for Earth's gravity. Jackson asked, his hand moving protectively to her rounded belly. I can feel it, Lara said with a smile. She's going to be extraordinary, part human determination, part Serati intuition, and completely herself. They'd ruled jointly For their first year of marriage, with Lara's diplomatic brilliance complemented by Jackson's practical wisdom, the diversity accords had led to unprecedented cooperation between species, and their own marriage had become a symbol of what was possible when beings looked beyond surface differences to find deeper connections. "Do you ever regret it?" Jackson asked as they reached their favorite bench, overlooking the palace gardens where they'd first really talked. "Giving up the possibility of a traditional royal marriage?" Lara laughed, the sound like crystal bells. "In the evening air, traditional would have meant bonding with someone who saw me as defective, someone who would have tried to hide my condition, minimize my contributions, make me smaller to match their limited vision." She took his hand and placed it over their growing daughter. "Instead, I have a partner who sees my strength, celebrates my uniqueness, and helped me discover that love isn't about finding someone to complete you, it's about finding someone who helps you become who you were always meant to be." As the twin moons rose over Saratha's prime, casting their silver light across the garden, Lara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Every rejection, every moment of pain, every instance of being told she wasn't enough, all of it had led to this moment, this love, this future they were building together. The galaxy's most unwanted princess had become its most celebrated queen, not despite her differences, but because of them, and the human who had knelt for her when princes wouldn't even look had become the love that would echo through the stars for generations to come. In the distance, ships from a dozen worlds crossed the night sky, carrying diplomats and lovers, traders and dreamers, all part of the great tapestry of galactic civilization that Lara and Jackson had helped reweave with threads of acceptance and love. Their daughter kicked against Lara's ribs, as if eager to join the adventure. "Soon, little star," Lara whispered, "soon you'll see what a beautiful universe your parents helped create for you." And in the gentle embrace of her human love, surrounded by the bioluminescent flowers that bloomed despite their fragility, the former unwanted princess smiled and knew that every moment of pain had been worth this perfect happiness.